All right, thanks for joining us for another podcast with the 43rd Mission called The Other Side. Today's a very special segment with some guests on it, Dr. Denise and Lauren from Epic Possibilities, co-owners of a therapy group that we've had some amazing results with, and you've got some awesome messages to share, so thank you for being with us. Can you introduce yourselves really quick so I don't screw it up?
Sure. I'm Dr. Denise Hazelwood. Most people just call me Denise. I am a trauma psychologist. And my background comes from the world of human performance and movement. And so I spent some time working with folks on how to get their brain and their body to kind of line up so they can perform the way that they want to. And so coming at therapy, I come at it with that whole brain plus body, everybody's a whole person approach. And for me, that aligns with the research that we're going to talk about today.
Awesome.
My name is Lauren Mallory. I'm a certified clinical trauma professional. And my background is initially social work. I did a lot within the medical field. And so I too kind of understood that alignment of how working with the brain and working with the body is a significant thing, because when you're in the medical realm, you're really in the body, and understanding that when we're working with trauma, we are working with both. And so Denise and I kind of connected on that and realized that if we're going to help first responders, we need to find a way to connect with them, and making sure that they understand the link between the brain and the body was kind of where we decided is a good way to start.
Yeah, great. What we wanted to talk about today was different types of therapy to educate people. What is therapy? What are the different types? So you can have some info going into that, and then how to choose a therapist. Can we start with types of therapy? Can you explain to us, because therapy for us as first responders is kind of a scary thing, right? We all don't want help. We don't know how to get help. We don't want to admit that we need help. And then you talk about therapy and we have no idea what it is. Is it me sitting on a couch crying? Is it something different? Can you tell us about types of therapy?
Well, sure.
Well, and therapy is such a huge, broad thing. And I think for us, we like to talk about the four main styles of trauma therapy that are evidence-based by the APA, because that is where you're going to get your bread and butter of saying that, hey, this is effective. And so starting out, therapy obviously was very focused on working in the brain. And so I'm going to take two of them and kind of give you some rundown a little bit about them. And then Denise is going to lead off with the two more common ones, ending with the one that we tend to use a little bit more often in our office. And so the two initial evidence-based treatments that kind of started out was prolonged exposure therapy, often called PE. And it is focused heavily on taking people back through the experiences of what they've gone through and kind of re-exposing them to the situation. And then working on, okay, what is your brain telling you about that situation, and how do we re-regulate in this current environment and let you know that you're not re-going through that. The challenge with first responders and prolonged exposure therapy is that there's certain things that you go through that re-exposing you to it is nearly impossible in a therapeutic situation, and extremely challenging to contain someone within a room when you're going through so many different visceral responses to it. Mm-hmm. And so PE has shown huge amount of success when it comes to helping people manage. You went through this situation. This is now what your body is doing with anxious thoughts. Let's work on those individual anxious thoughts. Mm-hmm. They do a lot of deep breathing in that treatment as well, and teaching you how to just center yourself. Mm. The next advancement was then cognitive processing therapy that was more known within the military context, because that is where they started realizing that when people came back from combat, they were definitely experiencing a huge amount of cognitions that were not relevant to the actual situation they were going through anymore.
And you couldn't bring them back to that.
Correct.
For exposure therapy.
Again, yep. So for this cognitive processing, we can't re-expose them. So how do we work on the thoughts? Well, part of that is a lot of working on, okay, what happened to you? What did that mean? And so they focus on something called an impact statement. And the impact statement is, because the situation happened, what changed about you, and really focusing on that person, reflecting on what changed about them. And that's really good if you have the insight and intuition to be able to pull that forward. If not, the impact statement can be really hard and really overwhelming for some people who are actively still re-experiencing a lot of flashbacks or intrusive thoughts.
I've got so many questions on that. Like, but I hear you. But when I studied some of this stuff, and obviously not at your level at all, but just trying to find answers and then getting answers from you guys. The broken area of the brain, there was that sometimes things get so traumatic you can't explain it. Do you find that would be relevant here? That people can't explain what happened or have a hard time doing that impact statement?
Yeah, and so through my experience, I am trained in both prolonged exposure therapy and cognitive processing therapy. And the impact statement was one of the hardest parts for people who, specifically this population, and even some of the military that I had seen, because they're like, I don't have words for it. How do I write out an impact when I can't even understand how it impacted me other than it made me feel bad? Mm-hmm. And since both of those styles of treatment are really heavy on focusing on the cognitions, some people who are still really struggling with an intense amount of symptoms, those treatments can be really challenging because they can feel like they don't understand or they don't know what to say. Mm-hmm. And so I definitely experienced quite a bit of that with some of my clients, especially around that impact statement. There's also a piece in cognitive processing therapy that talks about stuck points. And so the cognitions that are stuck in your body, again, takes a whole nother level of intuitiveness that some people, when they're in the throes of PTSD, they don't have that capacity within their brain to go that deep into their cognitions yet.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I hear that a lot from people. I really feel my mission is really to try to get people to folks like you. I mean, that's really what it's all about. But I hear a lot from people saying, I don't even know what I would talk about. I don't know where to start. It's overwhelming or they don't know how to express it. So This is great that we're talking about this because there is answers. Right?
Yeah. And so those are the two original styles simply because mental health was really founded on cognitive behavioral therapy. And both of those heavily use what's going on in your brain. And they have a little bit of components of teaching some grounding techniques to regulate your body, but they're very focused on cognitions. And with huge PTSD elements where you have the buildup of layering of traumas, it's not just, well, this is the thought that I'm stuck on. It's, I can't even get to my brain because everything else is moving so fast. And that's where they kind of developed and started moving forward in trauma treatment to find something a little bit different.
Yeah. And so the body became significant. Now, just for context, though, I mean, we've had people struggling with trauma since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
But the diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder was not identified until the early 80s. So not to date anyone in this room, but it's not that long ago that we said there are these symptoms that show up consistently when somebody's been through an experience that sort of looks in a general framework like this. Mm-hmm. And so the medical model, I think, really was where it started to develop any kind of treatment was because we had all these Vietnam vets. Mm-hmm. And it's the 80s, so now we're 10 years out, give or take, from a war, and they're still really, really struggling. And so we finally have a diagnosis. And even just being like, oh, I mean, I'm not crazy.
Right.
Felt good. And then PE shows up, and the cognitive processing shows up, and then in the 90s. So we're still not that far out from an actual diagnosis being identified. In the 90s, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR, came on the scene. Mm-hmm. And what they realized was that the brain actually wants to heal itself. Just like your bones do, just like your skin does, the brain wants to heal itself. But in the case of trauma, we're so overwhelmed and we don't have internal, external, we just don't have enough resources for the brain and body to do what it wants to do anyway. Which is also why some people are legit totally fine after something terrible happens and other people are absolute train wrecks. Mm-hmm. And we can't decide who's going to be okay and who's not after a given scenario happens.
Right.
And so what EMDR does is it identified the fact that when you stimulate the body back and forth across the midline, so it's called bilateral stimulation. So I can wave my hand in front of your face. I can tap on either side of your body. I can give you little buzzers that'll go back and forth. We can even do it with sound. Put some headphones on you and have the sound bounce back and forth. Something about that, and technology is only just beginning to tell us what, and we point it at a very specific memory. So in EMDR, we're going to identify a memory. We're not just going to like turn on the buzzers or the light bar and let you go. We're going to say, we're going to remember this thing that happened. And we're going to point the brain at that and say, this is what we're going to heal today. And then do the bilateral stim. And there's a protocol that you walk through. And so in a minute, we're going to talk about choosing a therapist. You want somebody who's going to use the protocols for all of these.
Yeah, because every single one, and all 4 of the treatments do have a protocol that they have to follow. And if you don't follow the protocol, you're technically not using the evidence-based treatment.
Okay.
And so you're not ethically treating trauma if you're not using the protocol.
And you may decide what is appropriate for a certain person. Maybe one of all 4 might integrate in some of the therapy.
Yes, there's
At
some
times.
wiggle room of being able to shift within it, but you have to hit certain hacks within the protocol. And so that's what the protocol is. And each of them have a slightly more, each protocol is slightly different. And so some of them are a little bit more rigid than the others. But if you don't hit the things that are specifically identified that are in the protocol, then you're not technically doing the treatment.
Right. So don't watch it on YouTube and try it yourself.
Correct. Yes. And if you watch some of these on a YouTube video, you will have no idea what they're actually doing because it's all done within the brain and the body. And so you don't actually see treatment. It's confusing.
Which then gets back to what you were saying about not having words. Because EMDR, and then I'll talk about accelerated resolution therapy in a second, you don't have to say the words.
Right.
And so, like, for the military, this was amazing because then people who went through confidential and top secret and classified missions could process their trauma with a trained therapist and not have to worry about whether or not my security clearance matched theirs.
Yeah.
Right.
Or I don't have words. It was just so awful. I don't have, it doesn't matter.
Yep. And that's what's so powerful. I want so many people to understand that. Like, you don't know where to start. You don't want to talk. You don't feel like you can talk. You don't have to. That is amazing news for most of us because they don't go into it wanting to talk.
Yeah.
Well, you have to talk the first day.
Well, sure.
You have to talk the first day.
We have to at least know a little about you to treat some of your trauma.
We have to know what to point your brain at to heal it.
Yeah.
But
you see what I'm saying? You don't have to wait like, oh,
Right.
I need to talk to a therapist about this.
Right.
As opposed to like, I'm just overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. I don't feel like myself anymore. You can
Absolutely.
just go in and figure it out. Yeah.
Well, you go in, we'll figure it out.
That's what I mean.
Yes.
Yeah.
We ask the questions, we know what we're looking for. And that's an important part about wanting someone who's trained in these evidence-based treatments is then they have the awareness and insight to help ask the questions or know what they're looking at.
Yeah.
Because as therapists, everyone is trained to know that trauma exists. To actually know how to treat trauma is a different level.
Yeah.
Not all therapists have that intuition and those skills to really dig into it, especially when we're talking about first responders. That's a whole nother facet of trauma as well.
Yeah. And so EMDR was the first place where the body got the opportunity to participate. And so moving through the protocol, there are a lot of sensations that come up in the body with emotion. And so sometimes people are like, oh, I feel like I'm going to throw up, or, oh, my chest is so tight, whatever. And so the body got to do its work too. And so 90s is when EMDR shows up in the scene. And then in the mid to late aughts, there's a whole bunch of research that flooded the scene too about how important it is to address the body in treating trauma. And so there's a whole bunch of somatic research, it's somatic psychology. There's a whole lot of research from that body of work that said we have to include the body on purpose. And so accelerated resolution therapy, which is the modality that Lauren and I both use right now, purposely includes the body. And so what ART, it's unfortunate, if you Google ART, you're going to get people drawing pictures and painting. And that is a legitimate modality for therapy. It is not what we do, and it is not designed for trauma treatment, to be clear.
Yes.
Accelerated resolution therapy, you need all the words. But when you Google that, you read about a therapy that says that a lot of relief happens in a short amount of time, And I think it's because it takes that same bilateral stem from the theoretical foundation from EMDR. It pulls in a whole bunch of really good material from a whole bunch of other well-established material and research in psychology, and creates this protocol that when your therapist walks you through it, it's hard. I mean, it's real hard. I'm not going to say it's not. But when you get to the other side, you can now remember what happened and not have your body get activated.
And that's the key that I've been trying to get out. The word that I'm trying to get out is that it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, there are things that we go through, our brains naturally process it in different ways, but at some point with a super high emotion, it gets stuck. And removing the emotion from the experience is really what it's all about. So that it's a suck zone that I went through. It's a bad thing that I went through, but it's not something I re-experience when I think about it. Is that correct?
Well, and that's where that trigger comes in, because I've had some people come into our office, tons of first responders that are like, that memory doesn't bother me, I can talk about it. And it's like, you can talk about it. You can cognitively talk about it because, yes, cognitively you've done the processing, but it gets triggered because your body did not do the processing.
Yes.
So the stuck stuff, for some people, there's actually no cognitive piece that is stuck. The cognitive piece has done the shifting because maybe they have that level of coping skills, or they were able to talk through it out loud. And so the brain did do what it needed to heal itself, but it didn't get all the way down into the body piece of it. And so there are pieces that are stuck within the limbic system that have the reactivity that still spike the body.
And I think from my own experience, I can talk about how there's certain things that I've been through that I just thought it'll never be better. How could it? It was horrific.
Yeah.
And that's not actually true.
Well, it was actually horrific. You just don't wear it anymore.
Yes. Like I don't have to experience it anymore.
And you remember that it was absolutely horrific, but you don't remember in your body like it's happening right now.
Yes.
And that is that amazing piece that we have found with accelerated resolution therapy is once you get through the protocol, and this is one session, getting through the protocol in one session, at the end of that session, you can talk about it out loud and your body's not reacting because you just moved and shifted the stuck sensations that were in there that had always reacted you before that.
And for context, what most of the time, my only exceptions are like the first time we do processing or a really huge event that was like an all-day horrible thing or a combat mission type length of a memory, I would say 90% of mine we do in an hour.
I would say it depends on the context of the individual. Some people who hold a lot of detail in their mind about some memories, sometimes I would say within an hour to 2 hours. Within 2 hours, that is on the longer end. Some can do it within an hour, but 1 to 2 hours of going through this processing by the end of that. And so that's 2 hours versus some of those other treatments that you're doing 12 to 18 sessions.
Yeah, what do you got to lose? I mean, give it a shot. What do you got to lose?
You have to come to the first session, and we're not going to process in the first session.
Yes, that is, we need context. We're not just going to throw you on the bilateral.
But to kind of slide into like what happens when you come to therapy, you come in and you have a conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, literally that is what it is. It's a conversation. And it's our job, it's the therapist's job, not just Lauren and mine, but it's the therapist's job to drive that conversation, to get the information that they need, to design a treatment plan to help you get where you want to go.
Yeah.
And if you go in and your therapist, like the second session, you come back and like, all right, what's my treatment plan? And they can't give you an idea that makes sense to you, you need a new therapist. Because we'll see where it takes us or something like that. Then we're going to go wandering through things, which could actually be harmful. And so somebody who is trained in these modalities, who knows what they're doing, is going to be able to structure essentially an interview to get the information they need, come up with a strategy that you will contribute your thoughts to. But it's a structured thing. It's not just come and chat with your friend and, bring coffee, and definitely don't go to a coffee shop. But like, come and talk to this person, but it's a purposeful conversation that is influenced by the therapist training. But you don't have to come in prepared for anything.
Right.
I mean, you don't start going to the gym because you got in shape. You have to get in shape at the gym. So you go as you are the first few times, and then you get in shape.
Yeah.
Coming to therapy isn't any different. You just have to be brave enough to show up and have a weird conversation with us.
Well, and I think another piece of that that I've unfortunately heard from a lot of people that have been in therapy before, first responders and others, is when I ask them, okay, well, what was your diagnosis? A lot of people don't know. And that to me is a huge red flag, because any therapist should be giving you that information, and you should actually have a conversation about it. Because whatever the diagnosis may be, if I'm putting something on your medical record, that's yours.
Yeah.
That's not mine to hold. That's actually your information. And so you wouldn't go to a doctor and not get a diagnosis for what they're treating you for. If they're giving you medication, they tell you what they're giving you medication for. If we're going to treat you in our office, we should be telling you what's the diagnosis we're treating, and give you the opportunity to ask questions about that. Because I know that, especially in the world that we live in, there is still huge stereotypes out there and misinformation about PTSD. And so if you had questions about that before we start doing treatment, it's really relevant that you have a therapist that's willing to sit down, have that conversation, and answer any questions you have about that diagnosis.
Yeah.
And so if you're in treatment and you don't know, I highly recommend that you ask your therapist what your diagnosis is. And if you're starting treatment, technically, if we are billing insurance, we have to give a diagnosis that first session. And so they can't tell you they don't have a diagnosis,
They've got to.
because in order to treat you, we have to have a diagnosis on file for you. Now, sometimes that diagnosis changes through treatment as we get to know more about you, which once again, if we change your diagnosis, it's only appropriate and ethical that we also then tell you, hey, this was what the diagnosis was in the beginning. Because of all the information in our work together, this is actually your diagnosis that I see that you actually need.
And the goal, if you come in and are diagnosed with PTSD, is that if you move through these evidence-based strategies, or a evidence-based strategy, at some point, you no longer meet that criteria.
Yes.
Because criteria is a whole lot of things. It's not just because you had a near-death experience or you were a witness to someone dying.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more to it. And so, yeah, we can't take away the fact that, yes, you had a near-death experience, somebody shot at you, you were in a major car accident, whatever, like, you were in a pursuit and it went sideways and all these bad things happened. Like, we can't take away the fact that that happened.
Right.
But that alone does not mean you have PTSD.
Yeah.
And so it is possible as you heal from whether your diagnosis is depression, anxiety, PTSD, whatever it might be, the treatment plan moves toward a place where you no longer meet that criteria.
Mm-hmm.
And Denise and I have both had numerous first responders in our office that have successfully done that through treatment. They've came in with very high scores, very evident of they have PTSD. And they have left our office no longer meeting that criteria, because with the treatment, which was very hard, and they put a lot of work into it, but that hard work paid off to the point where they don't have the symptoms, so they don't meet criteria for PTSD anymore.
And you're offering healing. I mean, you
Yeah.
truly can heal from this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Difference between PTSD and PTSI.
A letter. So, like
Because I love the PTSI idea.
So, like I
Yes.
said, the disorder diagnosis showed up in the early 80s because there was no hope for healing. It was, you come back with, you can look it back all the way back in mythology and philosopher writing. There's reference to people struggling.
Battle delirium,
Right.
or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so now we have the technology, so we can see literal changes in the brain, and I won't go down that rabbit hole,
Okay.
but we can literally see the changes in the brain from a trauma brain to a healing brain. We can see it change. And so we can now say there is an injury to the nervous system, brain and the nervous system, and we can see healing in that nervous system. And so a disorder to me suggests that there's no, you're stuck with it.
Chronic.
You're going to
Yeah.
have it.
Yeah.
Chronic condition.
Terribly sorry. Learn to live with it. PTSI says it's an injury, and injuries can be healed.
Yep.
With the proper treatment.
Yeah. And like you said, your brain wants to heal.
Yes.
We just need a guide.
Well, and so we love the concept of PTSI. Unfortunately, when you are moving things through the criteria of insurance companies and diagnostics and all these different people that have to put the checkbox on changing something like that for therapeutic process and to be able to diagnose,
Has to be.
the DSM does not have the I yet.
Yeah.
It still only has PTSD. And it only has 2 formats of PTSD, which still is very inaccurate. They have acute PTSD and chronic PTSD. Now, we know that PTSD is way more than that, and it's not necessarily a D. However, it takes a lot of work and a lot of different people approving those changes. I think in the future, we are definitely going to see that transition. It's just taken a long time to get there.
But you can Google post-traumatic stress injury and research studies pull up.
Yes.
Because if a researcher at a university or somewhere writes an article, they can call it whatever they want.
Right.
And so some of them are out there calling it PTSD.
I love it. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is because I don't want people to be afraid of a diagnosis. Don't be afraid that it's going to change your life. It's only going to change for the better, right? Because you're going to get the help you need. But don't be afraid of the diagnosis. It is recoverable. It is not chronic. It is not forever. It is absolutely healable.
Well, and I know that some people have big concerns also, like if I'm going to do anything after being a first responder, is it going to impact that? Or I specifically had someone that was in the military and had discharged from the military with PTSD. He wanted to become a pilot. And he was like, aviation will never approve it because I have PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? He's a pilot.
Awesome.
Because we did the work and I sent in the information and I was like, I'm going to advocate for you. One, because you're actively receiving treatment for it and healing, and the aviation, they're still seeing it back as how PTSD was. And so the world is making small changes. It's taking time, but you don't have to feel like, oh, if I have this diagnosis on, everyone for the rest of history will think if they see that on there, they're going to automatically see me as that Vietnam vet who's erratic and impulsive and hiding under the table.
Right.
And it's like, are there still people who believe that? Yes. Is it changing? Yes. We are making huge changes about that.
Yeah.
Well, and you're part of that, Jason.
Yeah. What you're doing here is bringing out that information of like, it doesn't have to be how we thought it was.
Nope. It does not have to be, and don't be afraid of it.
Well, speaking of thinking it doesn't have to be the way we thought it was, neither Lauren nor I have any experience being a first responder.
Thank you. Can we get to that?
Yeah.
I hear that too. I have to find a therapist that's been a first responder, people that need to know, what I've been through and that type of thing. And I think that is absolutely totally false. What you need to know is exactly what they're talking about and how the link between the emotions in the body and the brain. So, yeah, can we talk about? Have you ever been a first responder?
No.
But you're successful in what you do.
And we are very open to all of our clients. I'm not a first responder, and I'm not going to pretend to be a first responder.
Yeah.
I am a therapist who treats first responders.
Yeah.
And are there personality qualities? So at the same time, I don't want to say you can go see anybody.
Yes.
Yes.
So there is a culture. There's a military culture, there's a first responder culture, and it even like shifts a little bit depending on whether you're a police officer or a firefighter or a dispatcher.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's culture. And so you want somebody who understands your culture. Because I don't think, Jason, if you had gone to therapy and you sit down and they want you to explain the difference between a Glock and a SIG, and it has nothing to do with anything that has happened in your life, I don't know that you want to continue the conversation.
Yeah. Fair.
Because we're going to take a bunch of segues off on rabbit trails that aren't relevant to what you came in to talk about or to heal.
Right.
And that's where people get lost, I think, is that you have to know so that I don't have to explain all the acronyms or I don't have to explain all the things.
Yeah. I think that's important. But, I use the analogy like a Formula One car. I don't want to use car analogies a lot, but Formula One, like you're a Formula One driver. You can't say, well, I don't want a mechanic that doesn't own a Formula One. They don't understand. Like nobody owns a Formula One car. They're the professional that knows exactly what this system does, right? And that's for me, that's what helped me. It's like, no, you do your thing.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you're driving that Formula One car, you have to have maintenance on it. You're going to have a mechanic.
Yep.
Because we're running hard. And I think first responders run hard, especially when it comes to emotional experience, just because of what we see.
Well, and that goes into wanting a therapist who is trauma educated, not trauma informed. Mm-hmm. Because that's going to be your difference. Trauma informed is this buzzword that came about of like, okay, everyone needs to be trauma informed. They have it in work environments. They have it in therapy. They like, okay, what trauma informed means is that you know trauma happens. I'm pretty sure almost everyone in the world at this point acknowledges that trauma happens.
Yeah.
And so when someone tells you that they're trauma informed, what they're telling you is that they know that trauma exists. You need someone more than that.
Yeah.
You need someone who's dug into it, that is trauma educated, that understands trauma on a deeper level. Because then if you are talking about a call and you're talking about the nuances of some of the pieces of the call, they're going to know in the back of their mind, me knowing the specific of what that is isn't relevant to helping them heal trauma.
Yeah.
I don't need to ask about it.
Yeah.
I don't need to ask about the specifics of the gun, or I don't need to ask about the specifics of, well, were you with a sergeant or were you with just a regular officer? Or no. And so someone who's trauma educated and has an awareness of the culture to some extent. They may not know everything about your culture, but they compare the awareness of first responder culture is unique. And they're trauma educated in understanding that when you're helping someone heal with the trauma, what's the details of the trauma, whether it's that visceral component or the cognitions that they're needing the support on to heal from it. And so someone who is doing one of these 4 treatments that we talked about, they're trauma educated. Now, is every single one of them going to be a great first responder therapist? Not necessarily. Part of that is also owning whether this is something we can do. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of therapists out there who have great hearts and they really want to help, but they're not necessarily checking themselves on whether this is the population that they can actually support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it is hard work.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of sitting in some really intense, uncomfortable emotions. And we have to stay regulated as a therapist in order to provide proper treatment. And so if we're not regulated because we can't handle what's in our office, we should not be doing this work.
It might be too much, yeah.
Which is why, it's important that if you meet with a therapist and it doesn't go well, that doesn't mean that therapy is not for you. Because sometimes it's the therapist that you don't mesh with or that doesn't have the skill set to meet your needs.
Right. And it could just mean that it's not that they're not smart, they're not qualified, you just don't connect.
Right. Yep.
I've been trained for years and years as an instructor and lots of different things. And what we will do is oftentimes have a student where learning has plateaued, learning has stopped, right? And so we'll give them to a different instructor. The instructor will say the exact same thing that I said, and finally it clicks over there, and you're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But it's just that the way it was received by that person. So it's okay if you're not getting that from your therapist to say, maybe I need to find a different one.
And you may not even have good words, since we've already talked about not having words. You may not even have good words for why. Mm-hmm. When I was in grad school, I was on a college campus, had a student get transferred to me from another therapist, seemed to be going all right, so I wanted to check in, and I asked, I'm like, so how are we doing? Does this feel different? Does this feel better for you? And she looked at me and she's like, yeah, we're fine. You have brown curly hair. And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, my other therapist was blonde. Okay. That was all she had. That was all she could articulate.
Yeah.
But she knew that the other therapist was not going to work for her. And whatever we were doing in this initial stages was A-okay. And so we kept going, and she got what she wanted out of the therapy experience. Yeah. But for so many people, especially when we're adults, we kind of like, well, hair is a dumb thing. Like, why should I get hung up on hair? I can push through that.
Right.
No, that just might be the only words that you have. But if your gut says that's not a good fit, move on. I had one client, it's like, she sat down on the couch the first time I ever talked to her, and she's like, you're the 7th therapist that I have interviewed. And I was like, interviewed? Okay, well, let's go. Let's interview.
Job interview, yeah.
But it is a job interview.
And that's okay. We're moving on to like, how do we choose a therapist? And advice for us on how to choose a therapist. Is it possible to do an interview, or do you have questions? Can you ask questions?
Yes. Well, and we've been talking about a lot of the questions to ask.
Mm-hmm.
how are you going to help me is a fair question.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you don't understand the answer, that wasn't a good answer.
So ask another question. And if they're not able to get you to a point of understanding the information, then it may be right there you're seeing that there's a disconnect, right? Because the role that we have initially is to educate. That's one of the foundational things when it comes to being a therapist, is people are coming to us because they don't understand this. And so it's our role to help debunk or remove some of that misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're in a situation where you're sitting with a therapist and you don't feel comfortable asking a question, that's a big indicator that there's something within the connectivity that's not working out.
Yeah.
Because that's a huge piece of therapy, is being able to have that comfort to ask a question. Or I encourage my clients to challenge me all the time. If something that I say does not make sense, tell me. If you disagree with it, tell me. Let's talk about it. Because I'm not a genius. I'm a therapist, but I'm also human.
Yeah.
And sometimes maybe how I said it doesn't land with you. And if you ask a question back, I can say it differently and then it does land. Mm. And so maybe how I formatted it just doesn't land with your conceptualization of understanding. And okay, I need to flex as a therapist to be able to meet the needs of my clients.
And if they don't feel like you're not, then they can try someone else.
Yeah.
So what questions would you suggest? We got 4 types of therapy. What do you guys do? How do you do it? What's the treatment plan? Mm-hmm. Do you think this would work for me? What are the questions?
Some of these involve a lot of homework. So some therapists are really heavy on sending in homework, and other therapists not so much. You're the only one who knows whether or not you're going to do the homework. So be real with yourself. If you're not going to do the homework, don't have a therapist who relies on you doing homework, because then we're going to have some conflict.
Sure.
Yeah, because the first 2 protocols, prolonged exposure therapy and cognitive processing therapy, homework is a necessary component to it. And you have to do stuff outside of therapy.
That's hard.
And so, that's hard. That's uncomfortable, that you have to have the accountability to do it. Otherwise, the treatment is really going to struggle. And so if that is something that you're like, okay, I am a go-getter, you give me some assignments, I'll practice it between sessions, sure. Then those styles may match with you. If you are someone that is like, no, I'm not going to do some worksheet you give me, that's not my thing, then those may not be the styles that you're looking for.
And for what about people like, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know I'm just not myself, and I'm not feeling great, and I'm overwhelmed. Maybe EMDR or art therapy might be more appropriate, or some combination.
Somewhere to start, and I'm going to acknowledge that I am biased and say find an EMDR or art therapist, because those are the 2 I'm trained in. Yeah. So some of that is it depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
But if you're overwhelmed and you're just really, really struggling and you don't know where to start, EMDR's website for their organization and Accelerated Resolution Therapy website both have a Find a Therapist feature.
Yes.
But the other piece that I think too is that when we're talking about culture of first responders, I think a fair question to ask is, what happens if I disagree with you? Yeah. Because to me, a culture thing for first responders is if I want to teach you to deliberately breathe, tactically breathe on purpose, whatever we want to call it, box breathing, and I want you to do it while you're kicking down a door to go in and search a building, I'm not sure that fits. Versus, I want you to use it to recover between calls or when you get off shift. Do I understand that? Because maybe I don't, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But if I'm like, hey, Jason, I want you to do this right before this moment, and you're like, yeah, that doesn't really work. You can't really do it there. That's not safe. Mm-hmm. What happens next? Yeah. Do I, as Lauren says, do I flex? And oh, okay, so tell me when it would fit for you. And we have a good conversation about that. Or I'm like, no, you need to do it right now because your physiology needs changing. But now we're in a fight.
Yeah.
And that's not going to help therapy.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good.
And so what happens if we disagree is a fair question.
Great. Love it.
Also understanding and asking, what happens if I have to cancel an appointment because of work? Mm. And so, especially in the world that we're in right now, first responders get mandated, and in a lot of therapy offices, you need to have a 48-hour or 24-hour notice. And for some of them, they can be very regimented that if they don't get that notice and you miss 2 sessions, you get kicked out of therapy.
Oh, that's good to know.
And so you need to, that would be a very valuable thing to know because, okay, if I have to pay a fee because, yes, the therapist can't put someone else in there, for some people it's like, okay, I have to pay a fee, not a full therapy cost, but a fee because I canceled last minute.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to get kicked out of therapy because I ended up mandated for work and I couldn't do anything about it, that's pretty hard. That's not understanding the culture, right? Because for other people in therapy who maybe don't have, mandated work shifts, okay, if they're not showing up to therapy, there's a level of needing that accountability.
Mm-hmm.
It means something different.
But if a first responder is not showing up, not because they just didn't want to come in today, but because they literally had to go to work, otherwise they lose their job, like, okay, if they're not gonna be flexible on that, then okay, once again, another thing that may not be the greatest situation of them understanding the culture.
Yeah.
Which would be good to know up front and not suddenly you're in the mix and you like, hey, I got mandated, and then you get this email, well, if you miss one more session,
you're out.
That feels yucky.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
We can get that sorted out up front.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about types of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about EMDR, ART. We talked about how to choose a therapist. And if you're watching this video, do you guys have anything else that I haven't asked before we end this segment?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think we covered quite a bit of it. I know it was a lot of information.
I did think wait lists.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
So since I don't know about before the pandemic, but certainly since the pandemic, there has been a lot of people who've really found themselves struggling because they wait until their world is falling apart and they need a therapist right now, only to find out that there are wait lists out there.
6 months, 4 to 6 months, more.
That one seems short.
Wow.
As I say, 6 to 8.
Wow.
It also depends because seasonally sometimes there's a shift in how many people reach out for therapy because there's certain times of the year with certain diagnoses that stressors get higher.
Yeah. Yep. We see that in police work. Holidays suck.
Yes.
Well, and then
full moon.
Yeah.
But there's a ripple effect. So the holidays suck while you're doing your job, and then the holidays clear, and then you guys realize that the holidays sucked, and then you realize that you might want to talk to someone about the fact that the holidays had sucked.
Yeah.
And so there's this ripple effect that kind of happens. And so we tend to tell people, if you're even listening to this and you've made it this far in the conversation, get on a wait list.
Just get on it.
Just get on the wait list. Yep. Get on multiple wait lists. And then when somebody reaches out, if you're like, I think I'm okay, have that conversation. Can you push me down on the list again? Some people are like, well, no, if you turn me down the first time, then I'm not going to circle back to you at all. Okay, that's fine. We now know that. We mark them off your list. Mm-hmm. But get on that list so that when the ripples start to come, and now it's February and you realize that the holidays had sucked, we're probably calling you and saying, hey, your name is up. And it might be really great timing. Mm-hmm. So it is a thing that is out there. And I don't want people to be discouraged, but I also don't want people to wait until they're in the darkest place they've ever been to get themselves on a list.
Yeah,
or wait to find someone that doesn't have a wait list, because that's nearly impossible if you're looking for someone that's really doing the work that you're looking for and has the education and the experience. We're going to have wait lists just because we're not just a regular therapy, sit in the office, how's your day going?
Yeah.
We're doing the harder work, which means that sometimes that there's a lot of people seeking that now.
Yeah, thank you. And can I put a shameless plug in there for 43rd Mission? Because during that time, that time that you've decided to choose to be on a therapy list, congratulations on that. What do we do? Listen to more of our podcasts. The whole point is maybe to give you hope, give you answers, see other people that are gone through it, and let you know, A, you're not alone, and B, it is fixable. You're not broken, and we'll do everything we can to get that information out to you. So in that meantime, if you're looking for nothing else, we will try to provide some of that stuff for you to start feeling better or start feeling like you've made the right decision. So anything else?
No.
I love this topic. Sure appreciate you guys being here. Choosing to to start therapy is absolutely critical as a first responder. I would say as early as you can in your career is even better. So if you're asking the question, well, when do I start? Like I did, like, well, I'm not as bad as that guy. I'm not as bad as, I could be worse, or,
Comparisons will kill you.
Yeah, maybe I'll wait till I'm 53 at retirement and just check myself in somewhere. Now's the time. Today is the day. Make the call, do your research, reach out, ask for help, because it will do nothing but positive things in your life. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for what you do. Thanks for listening. If you've made it that far, of course, like and subscribe is what I'm supposed to say. Thanks for supporting our channel, and keep listening. We'll bring you some more. Thanks.